So you've learned the basics of the Disney World Lightning Lane system, but do you know these 11 tips? Let's dive in. Hi, I'm Shannon from www.prepschool.com, and we spend a lot of time talking about lightning lanes for Disney World because people tell us all the time that it is the most complicated part of the process. So at this point, you might have learned the basics. I have certainly tried to teach them, and there are previous videos. Be sure to go and check those out. We have a whole playlist of lightning lane tips, both in YouTube videos and shorts. And this one is going to be added to the list. But what I wanted to talk about is some tips that you might not know. Some are basic and some are more advanced. So you might learn a thing or two. Let me know after you have finished watching this. Let's dive into number one. The first one is that there is a grace period for when you can check into your lightning lane. So let's say you have a lightning lane that is booked from 1 to 2 p.m. The check-in time that will actually allow the light to turn green when you tap in using your magic band or your park ticket is 5 minutes before that, and usually an hour and 59 minutes after that. So in the example of a 1 to 2 o'clock lightning lane, you could tap in at 12:55 p.m. and as late as 3:59 p.m. So that is a pretty wide window for it to turn green. The reason I say that it is almost always an hour and 59 minutes is that sometimes Disney gets more strict with it when the parks are busy. And in that case, they will give you a grace period of 15 minutes, not an hour and 59 minutes. But having a few hours that you can tap into a lightning lane is so helpful because when you have to do lots of different reservations, you've got dining, you've got lightning lanes, you have special events, you've got all kinds of things going on. It's helpful to have a little flexibility. And Disney actually gives you quite a bit of flexibility most of the time. If you tap in outside of the window that I am mentioning, the light will turn blue, and then it is the cast member's discretion if they want to allow you through or not. Number two, you need to be booking the most difficult lightning lanes first. Now, I do mention this tip, I think, in one of the other YouTube videos where I walk through how it looks when I book lightning lanes, because part of my process is to look at my list of lightning lanes that I'm interested in booking and determine which one's going to be the hardest to get and let me book that park first. The way to do that is to go to the Thrill Data website because they track lightning lane availability, and you can, like a day or two before you are set to book your lightning lanes, go and see which of the lightning lanes that you want to book are disappearing the fastest. And you can see it on their list and then make that your top priority when it's time to log in and book your lightning lanes. Number three, lightning lane single pass bookings can be refunded via the My Disney Experience chat. So you're likely going to be using the Disney World app, the My Disney Experience app, for a lot of things. But one of those things that you can use it for is getting refunds sometimes, including single pass lightning lanes. This is a very common thing to happen because for whatever reason, people cannot use their single pass lightning lanes. One of those examples would be if you have a child that you booked a lightning lane for, but they're like, no, I'm not interested in riding. Well, you might not want to waste the money on it. So instead of going over to guest services or finding the guest experiences umbrellas, which is what most people do, you can do a chat in the app and just tell them your situation. You know, my 7-year-old was too scared to ride. We weren't able to use it. Can you do a refund? And that can save you some time from having to wait in line with the guest experiences or the guest services cast members. Number four, if you have a split hotel stay, you can book all of your lightning lanes at once, which is different than dining reservations. So if you have booked more than one hotel for your trip, that's called a split stay. And if you are booking dining, then your dining reservation dates are going to be 60 days before your first date and 60 days before your second date, but it does not work that way for lightning lanes. Thankfully for lightning lanes, they just look at your initial check-in date and you can book your lightning lanes for your whole trip at that time. Number five, when rides go down, if you have a lightning lane for that ride, it gets converted to something called a multi-experience lightning lane, and you can use this to your advantage. So let's use the example of 1 to 2 o'clock that I had earlier of having a lightning lane. And let's say it's for Haunted Mansion. But you see in the app that Haunted Mansion has gone down. So if you have a lightning lane during a time that it goes down, then Disney automatically converts your lightning lane that you have booked to something called a multi-experience lightning lane. And what that means is that you can redeem it for a list of rides, and the actual multi-experience lightning lane that you see in your app will tell you what the rides are, and you can just walk up to that attraction and use it whenever you want. You don't have to book it, you don't have to have a time. So let's say Haunted Mansion goes down and you get a multi-experience lightning lane pass, and it says it can be redeemed for Pirates of the Caribbean. That means that you can literally right then walk over to Pirates of the Caribbean and just tap in, and it will turn green. Some people do use this to their advantage. So if there is an attraction that seems to be going up and down a lot, they will purposely book a lightning lane. And then when it gets converted to multi-experience lightning lane, they go use it for something else that they had wanted to ride. Or if there's bad weather coming in, some rides are more likely to be closed when that happens. So they will book a lightning lane for that. And then when it is closed due to inclement weather, then they will use that for something else that they want to ride. So you can use it to your advantage, but also it's just good to know that that's how it works when you can't use a lightning lane that you've booked. Number 7, tiers do not apply at Disney World, not TEARS, but ride tiers. So when you're pre-booking your lightning lanes, 3 of the 4 parks have ride tiers. That's all the parks except for Animal Kingdom. And the reason is that it allows Disney to spread the lightning lanes out instead of everybody picking the headliners. They allow you to basically pick one of the most popular rides from tier 1 and then 2 from tier 2. But once you're at Disney World, there are no tiers. So it can be really advantageous to, once you tap in for your first lightning lane of the day, then start booking some of those other rides that were considered tier 1 because you can't book them all before your trip. Number 7, since Animal Kingdom has no tiers, you can book 3 popular rides before your trip. And you should. So I know Animal Kingdom can be a tricky one because it's like, should I even bother getting lightning lanes for this park? Because there's only currently 4 rides available plus some shows. But because they have no tiers, that means that you can easily book them ahead of time. And it's something I would definitely suggest if you want to do a later arrival Animal Kingdom, or if you want to do multiple rides without long waits. For example, if I were going, I would book Navi River Journey, Kilimanjaro Safari, and Expedition Everest as my 3 lightning lane multi-pass selections at Animal Kingdom, plus a single pass for Flight of Passage. So I would have 4 ready. And then outside of that, there's not much else that needs a lightning lane. Like, you can book it for shows. You could certainly go on Cali River Rapids if you want, but the waits there usually aren't very long. And so it can be nice to be able to have a later arrival, but also not wait in long lines. Number 8, lightning lanes can overlap each other, but they cannot overlap your dining reservations. So when you log on to book your lightning lanes, you likely already have dining reservations in your account, and you may find that it is not going to let you book lightning lanes during those dining reservation times. I guess Disney assumes if you're eating, you can't also be riding, so we're going to just not allow that. However, the lightning lanes can overlap. If your initial selections don't allow you to overlap, go ahead and book them and then go in and modify. The modification process will allow them to overlap. This also does apply to single pass lightning lanes. So let's say you have a single pass lightning lane for Guardians of the Galaxy, but a multi-pass lightning lane for Test Track. They're very close together at Epcot, so it makes sense that you would want them to be close together in time as well. And you can modify so that they have similar or the same times if you would like. Number 9, there are same day lightning lane drops for many attractions. So we've been talking a lot about the pre-booking process for lightning lanes, and when you're pre-booking, then you might see some rides are just sold out, but many rides actually have more lightning lanes that drop the same day, like when you're at Disney World at that park. And you can use this information to your advantage. The information for this is located on the Thrill Data website, where they have a whole page dedicated to attractions and when the lightning lane drop times are. I also have posted graphics that kind of summarize this information. It's in the post section of the YouTube channel. I have graphics that have it by park. You can use either one for your reference. But basically, these rides have become more available in the lightning lane system, and I would use this information to skip pre-booking lightning lanes for rides that have a lot of same day availability, and I would instead focus on the rides that do not have same day drops. For example, Remy's Ratatouille Adventure at Epcot is not on the list of rides that have same day drops, at least not right now. Things could always change. So, because of that, I would prioritize booking a Remy's Lightning Lane, but I would, for instance, probably skip Tiana's because Tiana's has so many same day drops that it would be an easy one to pick up when I was there. Number 10, you can use apps to help you both book Lightning Lanes and modify them. This feels connected to the last tip because I was talking about those same day lightning lane drops. And in order to take advantage of those, you kind of need to be on your phone at the drop time, refreshing so that if new ones pop up, you can book it. However, if you use apps, they will automatically search for you. The two apps that we talk about the most, and in fact, I've done a whole video about Standby Skipper and Wait Magic. Feel free to go watch that for more information. Standby Skipper is an app that will book new lightning lanes for you, and Wait Magic is a web-based tool that will both book lightning lanes and modify them. The best use of these tools, because we do use both for our own trips, I think, is to use Standby Skipper to book new lightning lanes. And then if you don't like the times, to use Wait Magic to modify. Wait Magic can also be used to modify the times of your pre-booked lightning lanes that you did before your trip, but also during your trip. If you or Standby Skipper books a lightning lane and you're like, it's not quite the right time, I would like it to be a little bit earlier, a little bit later, you can set that up as a modification search that Wait Magic can do for you. And if a better time pops up, then it will change it. And these apps can be super helpful so that you don't have to be constantly on your phone, constantly refreshing and looking for new times. And lastly, book an early lightning lane as a burner. This is a very popular tactic that many people use, but if you've never heard of it, I wanted to explain what it is and why people do it. So a lot of people will book an early lightning lane, and sometimes it's for something that doesn't need it at all. Journey into Imagination with Figment at Epcot, for example. But it also could be for something that you legitimately want a lightning lane for. And they book it earlier in the day so that they can tap in, because that first tap is required to unlock some functionality that a lot of people want. A couple of big ones, the most important ones, I think, are for park hoppers and for people that want to book more tier ones. So I mentioned that 3 of the 4 parks have tiers in the pre-booking system. So, for example, you may have booked lightning lanes and only gotten 1 of the tier 1 rides beforehand because that's all you're allowed, and then 2 tier 2s. But what you really want is all the tier 1s. So as soon as you tap in for that first lightning lane of the day, you can start to modify your other lightning lanes and or book the other tier 1s. And the earlier you tap in, the more likely you are to find availability. So people use burners for this reason, to be able to sort of book more tier 1s. Another reason that people like burners is for park hopping. So as soon as you tap into your first lightning lane, you can then start booking lightning lanes at another park. And this can be super helpful if you're park hopping, so that when you get to the other park, you already have lightning lanes that are lined up and don't have to worry about the standby lines. A good example of this would be, let's say that you pre-booked lightning lanes at Animal Kingdom. We're going to go ahead and snag all of those headliners that I mentioned earlier. And then as soon as you tap in for one, you're going to start booking at Epcot, because you want to have some lightning lanes lined up for when you get there in the afternoon. And so a lot of people will do it this way so that they can book in a second park. Not only can you book new ones in the second park, in this example, Epcot is the park we're hopping to, but you could also modify your Animal Kingdom ones to be Epcot ones if you wanted to. Let's say you really only wanted a lightning lane for Navi River Journey and Kilimanjaro Safari at Animal Kingdom, but the lightning lane multipass system has you booking 3, so you also have a third one for Cali River Rapids. You don't really need the Cali River Rapids one. So let's say you tap in for Navi River Journey early in the day, and then immediately you can book a new lightning lane at Epcot, but you can also modify the Cali River Rapid ones to be something at Epcot. So now you've got 2 already lined up at Epcot, plus you have a Kilimanjaro Safari one still to use at Animal Kingdom. I hope that makes sense. Anyway, that is 11 tips for lightning lanes. I want to make sure that you knew, some a little more basic, some a little bit more advanced, but let me know, did you learn anything, or do you have any that you would add to the list? I would appreciate hearing about that in the comments. Thanks for joining.